Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com here with an Avowed review. Avowed is a first-person role-playing game set in the Pillars of Eternity franchise. It's developed by Obsidian Entertainment, the same studio that brought you Fallout New Vegas and Outer Worlds. So with 100 hours into the game, the intention of this video is to give you the pros and cons. I received a free key from Xbox, so thank you for that. I did not receive compensation for this review. I'm a big fan of the Outer Worlds, so let that weigh on my rating and what I think about the game. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I played on PC laptop with a GeForce 470 graphics card, and I've been playing for weeks on end and enjoying it. So let's jump into what it's about: exploration, combat, gameplay, companions, you name it. Gonna give you a rundown, who should play, who should avoid, and the overall score. Let's get started. So Avowed, what is it about? It's a first-person RPG. You can play it in third person as well, and it looks pretty good for these typical first-person RPGs like Skyrim. It's open world, so you're gonna have 4 different areas you can traverse through called the Living Lands. Each region is gonna feel unique and have its own environments, NPCs, stories, side quests, and so on. Another benefit is, unlike Baldur's Gate 3, you can revisit these at any time, so they're not locked out for you, so you can bounce back and forth. But typically, you're gonna progress through one, leave it for good, moving on in the main story. So what's the main draw of Avowed? Look, I've looked forward to this game for years, and especially with the release of Baldur's Gate 3, it's all about player choice. And what Obsidian Entertainment does very well is decision making, specifically what I call morally gray decision making. This is kind of like real life, where there is no real good or bad choice, but you don't really know what to go with morally because nothing stands out as the obvious choice, and you have to go with your gut. This is what Obsidian and Avowed does very, very well, is giving you really tough decisions to make and then seeing how it plays out in this beautiful RPG world. Now, me personally as a reviewer, I'm one of those guys who picks up a game within an hour or two. I either love or despise this game, and for me, Avowed was in the love category. I started waking up early to play it, staying up a little bit late to play it, and it felt like counter to my experience in Kingdom Come: Deliverance 2. I gave that game an 8 out of 10, Kingdom Come, because I understood the exploration was just really second to none. But what really turned me off about the game was the hardcore, frustrating, time-consuming, endless amount of chores and busy work. Avowed is the exact opposite. You learn the premise of the main story, you start exploring right away, and you have the freedom to kind of go about the Living Lands, collecting treasure, killing monsters, finding hidden gems, and it's familiar enough to normal RPG players and not a huge turnoff if you don't want a survival game. So really enjoyed Avowed. The number one thing I enjoyed about it was the exploration, and that's the main strength of the game. What stuck out to me initially was the parkour system. So it's actually gonna have a lot of jump mechanics. The game's gonna beg you to explore, climb, jump, and look around, tinker in the exploration of the cities and outside lands endlessly. Me, I'm typically not the guy who finds every single hidden collectible, but somehow Avowed made this really fun and interesting, especially during their first playthrough. So there's a lot of different mechanics, like you can use grenades or spells to destroy doors, find hidden chests, destroy little crates and find something right around there. And it's just gonna constantly drip feed and reward you with some treasure right around the corner. So every little ounce of exploration could result in some of this really cool thing to find, and you never know it's around the corner. And that's what the game excels at, is verticality, making you go up and jump. It challenges you to think big when exploring. So you start climbing trees, jumping rooftops, and then it makes every square foot of the game feel a lot bigger when you factor in that it's up and down in 3 dimensions versus just a horizontal plane. Now, unlike games like Destiny 2, where I spent hundreds of hours, the parkour system in Avowed feels fun and fresh rather than punishing. So if I miss a jump in Avowed, it doesn't result in me dying typically, or my entire raid team waiting 10 minutes making fun of me to figure it out. Nope, it's challenging and refreshing, and it's a new take on exploration RPG for me specifically. And they have some added benefits in that many collectibles like treasures, there's these things called totems which give you this buff if you collect them and activate them, memory fragments which give you godlike abilities, and these treasure maps that, obviously give you good rewards. What's fun is all of these kind of tie back to 2 systems, your overall power and then also the main story. So it's not that you're just collecting stuff to mark down an achievement list. It actually ties in the main story and kind of gets you and enhances the mystery surrounding the main story. Plus, it makes your character more powerful. So I couldn't help myself but just kind of finding every little detail in the area before moving on, where normally I would beeline the main story, just meathead everything I could and get through the game as fast as possible. The downside of the exploration is it can feel repetitive, especially if you're going to play this game many times, you're just going to beeline to those really important collectibles and move on. But your initial time, it's super fun, jumping, exploring, and finding those hidden gems. Really reminds me of Hogwarts Legacy, but with a lot more jumping. Now, another strength of Avowed is its world. It's set in the world that has this rich history to draw from, specifically the Pillars of Eternity series. So the game setting is in this expansive universe with tons of lore, and from the outset, the world feels alive both visually and mechanically. Every small inch crawls with harvest materials, loot, and chests right around the corner, and enemies to kill. And when you get your second companion, Marius, he activates this like treasure detector similar to other games, giving you a little red outline for items that you missed. And then once I locked this, I kind of went back and rediscovered all the missing chests, herbs, and secrets because I wasn't thinking vertically. It just reinforces the fun of thinking outside the box and just tinkering around and exploring. So fun. Next up is story and lore. When it comes to the game's main story, not going to spoil it for you, it slowly spoons feeds you what's going on over time. And something that Avowed does or has is this dialogue and history PUD. So if an NPC discusses a term you don't remember, you can activate this and just mouse over it and it'll give you a definition. I found this super helpful because I've been known to spacebar through some really important conversations and completely whiff and miss the entire premise of the story. And this allowed me to slow things down and kind of see and refresh my memory on terms that I was unfamiliar with because I was a button masher. And another thing it does is it allows you to scroll up in the conversation tree so you can see if you missed something that was really important to basically making a decision or something. So this was a nice addition to typical RPGs where I speed through everything and miss this dialogue. I love the terms and the definitions. And at the outset of the game, you're unraveling this mystery and you start to learn about the world, lore, gods, and your overall objective. However, you don't know if the person guiding you or speaking to you is for you or against you. They offer you powers, making you stronger, and it feels really close to the Emperor, Mind Flayer, and Baldur's Gate 3. So you have this lingering sense of unease, making every quest much more intriguing to unravel what is their true intent. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but at least your initial playthrough, you're really going to be interested and invested of what's really going on. This doesn't feel right. That leads us to decision making. My favorite aspect of the story in Avowed is this morally gray decision making, which I talked about. And it's not perfect, but it's nuanced. So throughout the game, you're going to encounter these critical branching dialogue decisions to make, and they're not going to be as obvious as other games. In fact, I did a bunch of side quests only to discover Kai, one of my companions, was really sensitive towards one decision I made. Unlike other games, they're not going to gamify, being good or bad to your companion, and they're just going to leave you if you have 7 points into negative Kai stuff. It feels more organic, where just like a real life friend might disagree with you about something, they're not going to just end the relationship, unless they're a maniac, over one small disagreement. They might just have a conversation with you, work things out, and keep it moving. And so that's what I really liked, is you didn't know the obvious parts of the story that were going to trigger this for your companions, and you didn't know these little side quests that would lead to these huge outcomes at the outset when they seem very innocent and simple. So it kind of led you to these really cool moments where you just followed the quest wherever it may lead and have really lasting impact on your companions in the story. And when I talk about morally gray choices, there is one that's kind of sticks out, and you have to stop this portion of the plague from spreading. I'm not going to spoil what happens here, but you have to basically make a sacrifice. You have to do something bad, really. So do you sacrifice this or that? None of them are good. And it really replicates like these leaders and these tough decisions that you're going to have to make, which people are going to armchair quarterback for the rest of your life. But it's like, there is no right answer. So what do? Well, typically you just go with your gut. But that's what makes it going to be really fun, is going back over and seeing what this other choice does. Now, that's also the major downside of Avowed and the decision making, is it really requires multiple playthroughs, if not many, to see all the ramifications of those earlier choices. So you're not going to see those initial choices early in the game, like hour 10, 15, or 20. And in fact, your first initial playthrough, you might not know any of the choices had some different output. You don't even know. So it's going to take multiple playthroughs to really understand which little branching narrative determines what kind of outcome, especially the ending. It's very similar to Baldur's Gate 3, I would say, rewarding you with endless amounts of replayability if you want to see those choices. But where it changes a little bit from Baldur's Gate 3 is you don't see the impact of the choices that early, or you just don't know until you played a lot. Next up is companions. Is another essential element of the story, and they serve a function both in combat and gameplay. So companions are kind of similar to both Dragon Age and Baldur's Gate 3 in some respects. Like Dragon Age, they have a dumbed down skill tree with fewer choices. So Kai is your tank, Marius your range DPS, Giada a healer, and we have a DPS spellcaster. So like Baldur's Gate 3, you can return to the camp, and this serves to rest, refill your health, your essence, which is magic, craft, and hear your companions talk. Now, interesting though, the companions carry on conversations with themselves and you. So they will just sit there and start talking and interacting about things that have happened recently, the overall things that are going on in the world. And it's very reminiscent of my favorite RPG series, Mass Effect. And when venturing, you can select 2 companions to help you in combat. Thus, the game kind of incentivizes you to play the Holy Trinity, which you don't have to, but healer, tank, and DPS roles. Companions can be controlled manually. When I say manually, you'll have the little wheel thing similar to Dragon Age where you can assign them skills to use, or you can let them automatically cast skills and kind of just tinker around in combat. And they function pretty good AI, not perfect, but good enough to really help you in combat. However, they don't have armor or much beyond story elements and minor gameplay to optimize them. So they're really lacking the depth when it comes to crafting your companion build that Baldur's Gate, even Dragon Age the Veilguard, has shown us recently. So that's a big disappointment for me. Now, companions, at least Kai, has a side quest that we can explore and even some permanent bonuses to add to your character. However, it feels like some of the companion stories, like Marius, just fail in comparison to Kai's. He's the same voice actor as Garrus from Mass Effect. So you're going to see a lot of Kai and some of the same companions probably every playthrough, just because they have a lot more depth in their story and their appeal. Another disappointing element of the companions is you can't really romance them. And so most people don't play RPGs, I don't think, to romance companions online. Raise your hand if you do. Oh wait, this is a video. But if you're one of those persons like me, I like the romancing of the companions. It just adds a layer of storytelling and complexity to your relationships with them. So that's kind of a big whiff for me, is that you can't fall in love with them. And when you compare it to games like BG3 and Mass Effect, it is a bit of a disappointment. But they have good stories, good backstories. They're fun to use in combat, just lacking the depth from other RPGs. Okay, next up is gameplay and mechanics. And it's going to be very similar to other RPGs. This isn't going to be like Kingdom Come 2, which I'll use in a lot of comparisons because it's just so recently reviewed. So you're going to gain levels, you're going to unlock skills, passives, and abilities. And then you can pick from 3 different trees to create a quote-unquote build. And the system is designed for seamlessly swapping builds and weapon types depending on your playstyle. So you're going to have weapons that you can choose from, and you can kind of mix and match depending on what they are. Some are one-handed, some are two-handed, obviously, and you can bar swap. So this is going to lack a lot of complexity that other RPG games have, but it's also going to allow for some flexibility in non-meta builds. It's not going to be nearly as punishing as like Baldur's Gate 3 if you're playing on honor mode and you don't have a super sweaty build and you just can't kill anything. So it's going to incentivize you to experiment and not be nearly as punishing. I think the game has like 5 difficulties as well, and you can turn them up or down at any time, which is nice if you get stuck. Now the game's going to feature a lot of these weapons, right? So you can have like magical grimoires for spell casting, two-handed weapons for warrior, sword and shield, even guns and bows and pistols for range. It felt very similar to New World, especially the pistols and the gunpowder-based weapons. They have awesome visuals and sound. Really love that. But the downside is when you experiment with different weapon types, they really don't impact your gameplay that much, besides when you adjust the passives. So the passives are going to boost the damage, but equipping a weapon similar to New World and other games like this will unlock a bunch of skills for you. That's not really what happens in Avowed, so you can equip some rando weapon and then still use fighter-based abilities. So it doesn't really have a one-to-one comparison and feels a little bit weird, besides optimizing your passives for your particular playstyle. Now, when it comes to replayability and what the core gameplay loop is in Avowed, it's very similar to traditional RPGs, right? You're gonna start in a new zone, you're gonna explore grabbing a bunch of quests, side quests, this main overarching quest that you're gonna need to complete. And it's really gonna be about exploration and progressing that main story. So exploration is gonna be all about collecting more powerful items, leveling up your gear via crafting in your camp. As you craft better weapons, or as you upgrade those weapons you have to better quality, the game gets easier for you. There's not going to be any enemy scaling, so you're really going to have to invest in a couple specific weapon types and armor and maximize your crafting materials because they are scarce. So as you're leveling up, you're progressing those weapons and armor, you're progressing the main story, you reach one of 4 major zones, you can kind of of go to, and you work through that. The game's completion can take anywhere from 20 to 40 hours on your first time, depending if you just buzz through it or you're looking every nook and cranny like me trying to find all the collectibles for guides. But the game's really going to want you to complete it multiple times with different characters, selecting different choices to see what happens. What will keep players coming back is experimenting and tinkering with different weapons, skills, companions, exploration, and dialogue choices specifically. So think Baldur's Gate 3 or Mass Effect, Dragon Age, insert your favorite branching narrative RPG here. This is why you come back over and over and over to see how the world unfolds differently when you make different choices, and Avowed will give you that. Let's move on to graphics. So graphics wise, Avowed is a stunning combination of these blues and greens and purples. It's precisely what I love about the Outer Worlds. The color motif they use seems so different than other games, it just pops. And while it's a fantasy RPG, it has this hue reminiscent of sci-fi, giving Avowed this very distinct look and feel. And unlike Act 2 of Baldur's Gate 3, it doesn't have the sense of dread and doom until you get into instance-based areas. The graphics ran pretty smooth for me. I did have a couple of crashes and a couple of bugs on Quest mainly, but I was running on a 740 laptop and it ran pretty good. It's not going to have the same high fidelity graphics of those latest Call of Duty, Battlefront game, insert whatever first person shooter here, but the colors are the main attraction and you'll either love it or hate it. Like vibrant beach, desert, forest. You love hippie environments, this is going to be for you. And when it comes to sound, so I found Avowed similar to other RPGs. Voice acting, especially with Kai, is fantastic. Soundtrack is great with this fantasy RPG feel set on exploration. However, I didn't find it to have the micro details like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, where every footstep sounded different depending on my terrain. I'm not going to spend too much time on the sound, but it's kind of in line what you would expect on a modern RPG. Good enough to add to the game's overall appeal. Speaking of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, let's compare those two together. Logging about 100 hours, Avowed feels like an excellent RPG in 2025 because it's similar to what everyone knows, what everyone expects. You get a skill tree, you level up, you have some branching dialogue, here's your companions. It's reminiscent or similar to, I guess, a cookie cutter RPG. But if you like the cookie, you'll love this. Now, having reviewed Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, they're complete polar opposites. Avowed wants you to explore, jump, die, experiment, and it's 10 times less punishing. Meanwhile, Kingdom Come 2 wants you to feel the pain of dying or making a stupid choice. Avowed has quick fast travel, saves, familiar RPG mechanics, while Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has you doing laundry. Let me just put it plainly. I found Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 game time inflated by infuriating chores and busy work. I have chores and laundry to do in real life. The last thing I want to do is wash stupid clothes in a video game. And yes, I played it. While Avowed has every moment feel like I was making progress. So if you're looking for a real life sim in medieval times, you will not like Avowed, do not play it. But if you're like me and just played Kingdom Come 2 and died and lost 2 hours of progression because I'm an idiot and didn't save, or I'm banging my head on my keyboard because I'm having to do laundry, you will like Avowed more. That brings us to the major question: who should play Avowed? So I think I've answered this already, but if you're an RPG gamer that wants something emphasizing exploration, critical decision making, you will love Avowed. Avowed is for you if you enjoy companions, collectibles like Hogwarts Legacy, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, or if you want some simple, easy formula for RPGs. It's easy to follow the story, it's not punishing, it's beautiful colors, it's fun. However, if you want a hardcore experience similar to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Avowed will disappoint you. If you want to romance and smoochy NPCs, Lizelle, Shadowheart, I'm looking at you, girl, then Avowed might not be for you. Lastly, if you're looking for something earth-shattering, some new RPG mechanic that's going to blow your mind, Avowed's not going to have it. Avowed is for the typical RPGer looking to sink their teeth into something fun, vibrant, familiar mechanics, familiar system, with a new and interesting story. And Avowed's going to let you replay over and over with slight variations and experience the same game in new ways, and that's its strength. Overall score, I would give Avowed a 9 out of 10. And that might be a bit high, but I just loved it. I picked it up in an hour and found myself doing things I normally would never do in game. That's why I give it a 9 out of 10. I would never normally use stealth in my builds. I think it's cheesy and corny and overpowered. I was using stealth because I was getting my butt kicked using a two-hander, so I was experimenting with builds. I never ever go and collect every little thing in the zone. In Avowed, I found myself collecting every little thing in the zone and enjoying it for hours and hours, sucking down an energy drink. Loved it. I found the story easy to pick pick up, and if I fat fingered and spacebarred through like an idiot meathead that I am, I could just mouse over and go, oh, that's what that means. Basically, it was everything I expected from a good RPG. And it doesn't need to be perfect to be a 9 out of 10 for me, and just a really good, fun RPG, especially in 2025. So the downside is, and why I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, obviously, is lackluster, no companion relationships and romance. The build system was a bit weak in complexity, and there was nothing overall game-changing in the landscape of RPG, so it wasn't some earth-shattering new development or something. But not all RPGs need to be a masterpiece to be great. And with Avowed, this is precisely what I expect, what I enjoy, and what I know from RPGs. And look, if you got something out of this review, hit that thumbs up, subscribe for more, and I hope this saved you some time and what to expect from Avowed, and if you should get it or not. And thanks Xbox for the code and letting me play early.